What a great day so far. I am so proud and honored to be up here moderating this session with these three incredible women, all of whom are connected to the Olympic and Paralympic Games in LA28. I'm excited to dive in and hear your incredible stories. I'd love for you to start with a little bit of background. So Katie, a little bit of overview of the USOPC and your role. For Courtney and Maggie, a little bit of a snapshot of the journey that you went through to get to where you are today.
So think of the U.S. Olympic and Paralympic Committee as the team behind Team USA, these amazing ladies and thousands of other athletes that compete for the U.S. Olympic and Paralympic Games. And my role is growing Team USA fandom and promoting USOPC impact to help drive revenue generation.
Yeah, my journey began with Team USA back in 2014. I sustained a spinal cord injury in 2010 after a spinal cord injury burst, or a blood clot burst in my spinal cord injury. Before then, I was very involved in soccer. I was competing at the collegiate level, and 2010 was when the injury happened during a game. So it was quite the transition, going from not knowing about adaptive sports, not knowing what my life was going to be like, and then inevitably I found out about adaptive sports, and specifically wheelchair basketball, in 2012, and my journey has evolved from there, where now I've competed at 2 Paralympic Games, received a bronze medal in Tokyo, a silver medal in Paris, and hopefully, thank you, hopefully the trajectory continues for LA and we get that gold medal. So that's kind of how my journey has evolved over the years.
You're on the perfect bronze, silver, gold.
Right?
Yeah.
That's the hope. That's the hope.
I'm Maggie Steffens. I play water polo with Team USA. And similarly, I grew up playing every sport in the book. And I definitely think that is a huge reason I'm where I'm at today. And I think it's a huge proponent to youth and especially girls' sports. But I was really lucky to be the youngest of 4 in my family who all ended up playing water polo as well. And my oldest sister, Jessica Steffens, actually went to the 2008 Olympic Games. And so at just about 14 years old, I got to go to my first Olympic experience as a fangirl with stickers on my face and, pigtails, the whole deal, in Beijing. And got to watch in the stands. And I was a water polo player at the time, super passionate about the sport, but I think being able to actually be at the Olympics, feel the Olympic movement, really get to see the energy behind it and see my sister, somebody I know, somebody who I see every day, living out my dream, it really made me feel like it's possible. And they ended up winning a silver medal, and I remember, obviously a bittersweet moment, but I remember watching that final and looking at my dad in that moment after the game and saying, I want to be there next time. And the following summer, at 15 years old, I was invited to play on Team USA alongside my sister. And we got to go to 2012 together to win the first ever gold medal for USA water polo. So I started kind of that Olympic journey as the youngest, just a young buck. And then in 2014, I was named captain of the team and have since gone to 4 Olympic Games, winning gold in 2012, 2016, and 2020. So the first team to ever do that and the only women's team to finally tie a men's record in water polo with 3 back-to-back gold medals. Fell just short in Paris with a 4th. And here we are today. So a long journey for me, but something clearly I'm still very, very passionate about.
Thank you for sharing. Looking forward to hearing more. At Next League, we have an internal positioning statement that we call Think Like an Athlete, because we think what we do correlates to things like training and competing and recharging. As athletes, I'd love your perspective on this. Maggie, you've been an elite athlete at a very young age, and it sounds like your journey has evolved to becoming the youngest team member to the captain. What has that looked like for you?
Yes, very different. And I think it is really relatable for sure. When I first joined the team at 15, honestly, I was just trying to survive. Like, okay, I've never trained this much in my life. I've never even known about nutrition. I didn't even know about sports psych. You know, what is paying a bill? Right? These are basic things for some of the older players, and all I wanted to do was make my dream a reality. And in the most unselfish way, I was very selfish. You know, like, what do I need to do to not make a mistake? How do I make sure the older veterans who I just watched in '08, who I have their signatures up in my room, how do I make sure I don't let them down? How do I, get to my goal? And slowly over time, year by year by year, that really narrow-minded training really opens up. And your perspective just completely shifts every single year, especially being a part of Team USA, because it truly is a movement. And, just like myself in '08, I got to watch these girls. They were my role models. They were teaching me things. When I joined the team, they taught me how to be strong women. They taught me how to be a leader. And I didn't care about that. In 2012, I was just like, I want to make the team, and I'll do whatever it takes. And by 2016, it's like, okay, well, now I'm that person, and I'm only 18. Like, how do I be a role model? And then by the next one, it's, okay, I'm not just a role model to my teammates. Now young girls are looking up to me. And then even by Paris, it's like, okay, how do we grow the sport? So each Olympics, your passion, your purpose, your why, for me, has kind of shifted from this very personal mindset, personal dream, to each year, how do we make this dream a reality for the bigger picture? How do we make this opportunity that I've been so fortunate to earn and to have, how do we provide that for more of our youth and give them the chance to believe what I believed in 2008, which is, I can do this. And that's been a really special thing for me. I think in 2012, winning the first gold medal by my sister is probably the best Olympic moment. But after that, being a captain and no longer it being about my journey, it was, how do I make sure these other girls get to wear a gold medal? And then I'm a coach, I'm a mentor. By 2020, 2024, having girls I mentored and coached on the team with me, that was something that is unbelievably satisfying, because you realize that your impact has actually come to fruition. So we'll see what happens in '28, but seeing the training has stayed the same, the dedication, the commitment, which I'm sure Court will talk about as well, but I think the perspective has just completely opened up year by year by year.
Great. Courtney, would love for you to weigh in here too. What do you think it takes to consistently and successfully compete at the highest level?
Yeah, I think she said it just right now. It takes a lot of dedication and motivation to continue your journey. It is a long journey, and I think a lot of people, there's this misconception of like, oh, it's just a year, right? You're just building up for the Paralympic or the Olympic journey, right? It's just that year. But there are so many competitions before that you're preparing and making sure that you're prepared. And as I've gotten older, I've noticed that my perspective now is all about recovery, right? Like, as I've gotten older, recovery is probably the most important aspect of my career now, because if I'm not recovered or if I'm not going to perform at my best, that's because I didn't take those steps to make sure that I was mentally and physically prepared for the competition. So that has something has really evolved for me, and kind of what you were saying as well, that idea of you're here initially when you make a team, right, for yourself. Like, you're here to prove something. But then as you evolve and as you get older, you realize that there are still maybe some things that are missing with our career and our trajectory that we don't want the next generation to have to cope with. So you're put into this role of advocacy as you get older as well. And sometimes that's, voicing your opinion and voicing what needs to get better, and that has been a huge role in my journey as well.
Thank you. I'm going to take that back to our team at Next Like to Hear. I think what you've shared was incredibly important. Katie, sitting here with two athletes, can you share what the USOPC does to support athletes leading up to training and competition, but maybe equally important during non-competition cycles?
Yeah, I love the question we get asked often, which is, what do you do in between games? Like it's nothing, and you all are training every single day, and I like the phrase, think like an athlete. Thankfully, we don't have to completely, we can just ask them. And I think the mindset we've taken on is continuous improvement. So you heard the commitment you all are making to your respective journeys. We're offering mental health resources, performance innovation resources, education, transition services, a number of different things to support their journey before, during, and after the games. And the best thing we can do is to continue to listen and push ourselves and say, how do we get better at that, the same way you all are committing day in and day out to do that for Team USA. So, and I mean, one of the themes I loved about what I heard from Courtney and Maggie is also this, you're part of something bigger than yourselves. And I think that's something beyond continuous improvement that the Olympic and Paralympic movement pushes us to do, is recognize this is sport, but it's also mission driven, and it serves a very powerful role in culture and society today. So I think in ways we all encourage ourselves to take that on and see, you know, the difference that we can make too.
I'm going to shift to talk about resiliency. Courtney, your story was a part of a documentary that recently aired on Peacock called Adaptive, which is an intimate view into the lives of Paralympic athletes leading up to the games. When we were chatting, you mentioned using WNBA athletes as models and inspiration for adaptive athletes. Can you expand on that?
Absolutely. First and foremost, has anybody, raise your hand, has anybody seen Adaptive yet? Oh, okay, there's some names. All right, for the rest of you, that's your homework. Go home, watch Adaptive on Peacock, all right? But as far as like how we build our inspiration on WNBA athletes, I think there's a lot of commonality when it comes to storytelling and narratives, right? And how important those those stories that are being told and those narratives are being told, and how important they have been for the growth and the movement of WNBA as a whole. And part of that is, right, those athletes are being vulnerable and they're resilient and understanding that we deserve more, right? And those conversations are being projected by major platforms. And you're starting to see that within adaptive sports. And we've been able to utilize those lessons that we've seen through WNBA athletes by sharing our stories, sharing our narratives. And now that we have a docu-series that isn't just going to follow my story, not just the other athletes that are also involved in this series, but this journey is going to continue, and this docu-series is going to continue to propel those stories through adaptive sports and through that storytelling. And that inevitably is going to help with the visibility and the growth of our sport, which has helped with WNBA, which has helped with those women in sports that have paved the way and utilized those voices. And so now that we get the opportunity as adaptive athletes to use, right, Peacock's platform to share those stories, we're really hopeful. And the dream for me is that one day we will have a professional wheelchair basketball league in the US because of these stories being told. And that, yeah, let's keep it going. Yeah, I love that. So that is why it's so important for us to learn from these stories so that inevitably we can get to that pinnacle as well as adaptive athletes.
Maggie, you had a very public social media post in the spring of 24 leading up to the Paris Games, which led to a U.S. women's water polo superfan in Flavor Flav. Can you give us the, I know, it's hard not to say it like can you give us the behind the scenes? Like, how did that happen? And what was the impact for your team and women's sports more broadly?
Yeah, I mean, it was a surprise in the sense that I never thought Flavor Flav was going to be the one to respond. But I think, you know, something that Courtney was talking about, and I think something that, especially being a part of Team USA and different sports and the Olympic movement, is learning from others and seeing what has worked and being willing to ask for help. I think especially as women and especially as Olympians, like, we are taught, put your head down and do whatever it takes. If my coach told me we're gonna train in a dungeon for a year to be an Olympian, like, I will train in a dungeon for a year. And, you know, like, you will do whatever it takes because this is everything to you. Doesn't matter about money, doesn't matter about fame, like, nothing matters except the Olympics and your team. And that is something that is really different. And to that point, like, how do we now adapt to thinking a little bit differently? Like, okay, we don't need to train in a dungeon maybe for a year, right? Like, how do we learn from what other women athletes have done and been empowered to ask for help and speak up, and how do we do that for ourselves? So, you know, one of the biggest things, like I was mentioning, is how my role has changed. And I think that's something that probably all of us can relate. Like 4 years ago, your role was probably very different in your career than it is now. And that's a bit scary to step into new roles. And going into 24, I was just watching all of these women in all these different sports speak up. And I was sitting here like, wait, we can do that? Like, am I the one to do that? Like, now I'm the oldest on the team. Is that my responsibility? And I honestly was really scared. And so I got some of my fellow older teammates together and I said, hey, like, do you guys support and it was a very big, like, I look back and I was so nervous to post a picture of my team and say, hey, I basically said, hey, this Olympics, I empower fans to not just watch the mainstream sports. I empower you to watch some of the niche Olympic sports, that this is our one chance. This is our one chance to make impact. This is our one chance to be on the big stage. And by you watching, that makes a difference. By you learning water polo, by you learning wheelchair basketball, that is more impactful than any of you could ever imagine. So I posted a picture of my team, kind of got the support from some of the other leaders, and I basically said that. I was like, hey, watch field hockey, watch water polo, watch women's fencing, like, try different sports, because a lot of these sports are the ones who don't just play water polo. Like, we have 2 to 3 jobs to support ourselves. We do everything it takes to be at this stage, and your support is what could help us grow in the future. And Flavor Flav came out of nowhere, came out of left field, and basically responded to that, and it led to this entire movement of just needing another voice. Unfortunately, this is the reality, but fortunately it happened to us, to have a louder voice, somebody who has a bigger platform to say, I'm behind you, and I'm with you, and I believe in you. And ever since then, he's been our biggest hype man. I think hopefully some of you guys actually watched water polo and learn, even just saying it, right? Like, that makes a difference to us. And that's kind of what we're looking to do as we grow, especially with the USOPC, I'm sure as well, is there are so many sports out there, and sometimes you just need a little extra hype behind you and a little extra voice, a little extra something, a little extra spice. So I'm super grateful for him and the movement it created. And now it's like, well, how do we top Flavor Flav? I'm not sure.
We're going to look forward to see what happens. Katie, the connection between fans and athletes is incredibly important. Can you share your perspective on that and what you're focused on right now?
Yeah, sure. I love that story, because what happened is you not only made a difference for water polo, but you created FOMO. I don't know if you can still say that anymore, but you created it during the Olympic Games where others stepped up to support other sports. So we see our role as creating a platform to tell Team USA athlete stories. And look at the LA Games, probably 1,200 athlete stories that can be told. So our focus is on both personalization and scale, finding the Courtneys and the Maggies and everybody. Our brand campaign is One for All, which is the premise that you can see yourself in Team USA. And if you all go out and find your ones, it's our job to connect you with someone who has similar interests as you, participates in similar sports, from the same college, town, what have you. The diversity of Team USA is amazing. So our job is to make sure that we surface all those amazing stories as best as we possibly can to connect with the Olympic and Paralympic Games in this country.
Sounds great. The Paris Games were distinctly Paris. What sort of pressure do you feel knowing the LA Games are going to be on home turf, if you will?
Do you want to do that first or me?
Whatever.
All right, well, we find 2 types of pressure with the LA Games. First, I know LA is going to meet the moment in a uniquely LA way, and every games faces the how do you beat or top the one that just happened, and Paris was incredibly special. So I have no doubt in what LA is going to bring to the table. Our pressure comes in two ways. One, and I don't know if you feel this too, you probably have it more than I do, but just is the pressure to perform on home soil. Team USA as a collective has been tremendously successful, in particular at the Summer Games. And so we're going to feel the pressure to perform. And the second one is just to have this be a games that sits across in experience and connection across all 50 states. A lot of us here may not be in LA for the games or have the ability to experience in person. Most people in this country will experience it from their home, their couch, their phone, what have you. And so our challenge is, what is that very relevant and connected experience to make these games a true catalyst? When you think about the last home games on US soil, it was almost 30 years ago. So we have some work to do. I don't think there were cell phones and technology and a few other things back then. So to make the LA Games a true catalyst for what sport is in this country next, we have to make sure everybody in this country feels a part of it. And so that's pressure number 2.
That's great. Courtney and Maggie, you're also both from California. What are you most excited about and looking forward to?
I mean, we got that advantage, right? We have family, we have our home base, we are on our home soil, so that is a huge advantage to begin with. And at the end of the day, the beautiful thing about the Paralympic Games and the fact that it's in the US is that we get to continue to have these conversations to normalize disability, to normalize adaptive sports. And that's something that I really, really find so magical.
Yeah, I would say similarly, there's 2 parts to it. One is there's pride. So water polo and all aquatic sports will be in Long Beach, California, which is where my dungeon has been for the last 17 years on Team USA. So to have the opportunity, that is where for 17 years of my life, I have dedicated everything and sacrificed so much for this dream. And now we get to show off what we've worked for in that dungeon, right? Like where we've actually worked, there's a pride there that I think will give us that little bit of extra energy. And then the second piece is the inspiration. Normally, not that many Americans maybe are at an Olympics, right? Like in Europe, there were tons of Europeans. How easy, you could just train to Paris. Whereas now we get the chance to inspire the next generation, and ideally, with a gold medal, there is that stress to perform, but that's what you are as an Olympian and Paralympian. You love the pressure, you want the challenge, and now there's that bigger picture where we get a greater stage to have impact.
To wrap us up, and maybe in a moment of reflection, I'd love to hear all of your favorite memories from participating in the games. And maybe, Maggie, maybe your second favorite, because we've already shared your first.
Sister. That was
Courtney, kick us off.
Honestly, it's just the moments you get to share with your teammates, your staff, outside of the games are something that you always remember. You're going to go to your teammates and be like, oh, hey, remember that one time we got stuck on a bus because the ramp wasn't going down? Yeah, that was fun, right? Like, there's so many of those stories that you get to reflect about and have commonality, and it's just, it's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, so the first was obviously standing on the podium with my sister. That's a tough one to beat. The second I would say is I always feel like at the Olympics or Paralympics, your play is your opportunity to say thank you. And I've been really lucky to have my family for most of the Olympics in the stands, and they do everything. Like ever since you were a kid, you know, they're driving you, they're supporting you, the friends and family who have been by your side through the ups and the downs, them being in the stands, I feel like I finally get to show my gratitude, and it's a really empowering moment. The first Olympic game you get to play or Paralympic game, you look in the crowd and you're like, this is so cool. Like I finally get to say thank you for being a team behind the team for me. So I think that's something that is always a really magical moment.
I'll just say it's the things you don't see at the games that I think are the most impactful for us. I'll just use one example, but there's truly thousands of them. But Noah Lyle's 100-meter win in Paris was incredible. And milliseconds, right? And it stopped time, and you realize how close it is to happening or not happening for them. And I know the hundreds of people that contributed to making that possible for 4 years in lead up to that single second moment. And so I just used that because time literally stopped. Everybody was looking around and was like, who won? What happened? And it was a pretty incredible moment. I'll never forget that, in large part because I do replay the conference calls and the planning and all of the sports med folks and performance innovation folks and everybody that played a part in not only supporting the accomplishment there, but also the storytelling around it and things like that. So I hate to pick one story, but it's an example of many that you get to do. If you can't compete in the games, certainly the second place is getting to be the team behind the team. So thank you.
And everybody at the Olympic Village in the USA House, we basically all live in like an apartment complex. And there's a TV downstairs, and everyone, like, we had a game the next day, and we're like, we gotta watch this.
Wild.
I have never, the building shook. Like, everyone was so proud because you're all part of Team USA in that moment. It is so true. It was magical.
Well, I feel like we only scratched the surface. Thank you, all of you, for sharing your incredible stories. And definitely watch Adaptive and keep an eye on for these two for LA28.